All right, Trevor, let's get going. Good morning. Great to see everyone on the Friday 15. As we said last time, we're going to deal a little bit with Pesach ideas. And I know I sent the invitation out at like 1 in the morning or something, so I don't fully remember the exact title, but something to do with questions. So I'd like to explore a little bit one aspect of the Haggadah, which is not so much what's being said, but why it's being done that way. Meaning that our sources bring down that when a person's going through the Haggadah, they have to do it in very specific ways. For example, you start with, the bad parts and you lead up to the salvation. That progression from bad to good is part of the structure laid out hundreds, thousands of years ago of how we tell the story. Another aspect of it is what's called derech shelo tshuva. The nature in which we give over the information has to start from questions to answers. We see that obviously in the most profound way with Manishtana, which is all questions. That's the kickoff. And also, if we're familiar, when we look at some of the little writing, it speaks about, take the matzah off the table here or do this here. Why? Just so that people will ask, hey, what are you doing? That's weird. This whole idea of questions seems to be a fundamental aspect of the entire Seder. And so much so that even if, this should never happen to anybody, but even if a person was by themselves, this did happen to people over COVID, and they were literally alone, you have to be almost schizophrenic and ask yourself the questions. Hey, Rafi, why do we do this? That's a great question, Rafi. Let me tell you why we do that. You have to go through the motions of literally asking the questions in order to go ahead and fulfill this commandment of what it means to go ahead and tell the story. So the question is, what's the obsession with questions? Why is that such a fundamental aspect? So there's so many answers to that question that we can give, but we're going to parse a few of them, which I think are extremely important for us to keep in mind in different facets. Number one, Reb Tzadok Cohen says as follows. Reb Tzadok says, at the end of the day, what questions are re-examining the things that we think we already know. Meaning, how often in life do people just say, hey, this is what I learned when I was 5 years old, and that's how I know it? Now, if I went to anyone in their mathematics or their scientific understanding of anything and said, hey, do you know how the body works? And I'd be like, yeah, it didn't make sense. It spoke about how like blood flowed and this, that, whatever. I remember you'd be like, but when you get 40, 50, 60, if you're interested in medicine, all of a sudden your understanding of that becomes so much more complex. And you often find out that things that you might have thought beforehand were right might be wrong, and the opposite. Things that you always thought were wrong all of a sudden start to make sense. As we get older, we get more perspective, we get more understanding, and therefore there's an importance always of questioning the things and re-examining the things that we already know, which is important because I start with that because often we're so focused on our children or on the grandchildren, and we want to make sure they ask. But this halacha, this law that says anyone on their own asks the question, means that me, myself, and I have to go through the process of constantly questioning. There's an organizational psychologist, Adam Grant. He has a book called Think Again, which I think the whole premise of that book, I remember leafing through it quickly, was just that we go through, motions in business and whatever it is, and we just assume this is the way the process always worked. It's funny, I was just thinking, I ran from Costco, I had to get the fish, because yesterday the fish was out, because anything that's kosher to Pesach is out by the end of the day, so I had to go in first thing in the morning. So I got the frozen fish, brought it out, they're filling out my, they make that little note on or they like strike the pen on your receipt as you're walking out, and then I'm holding it, I didn't have a cart. I'm like, they should really have a garbage bin right here. The amount of receipts that are all over the ground, I'm like, as soon as they do that little, I don't know why they do it or what it does, and they even make it seem like it's got a lot of meaning. I'm going to make a mark here, a mark there, a mark there, 4 different black marks with the marker on there. After that, I'm just like, and I was thinking going to Vince, one of the guys at the thing, he wasn't there this morning, saying, Vince, you know what? I'd like to put in a suggestion. Maybe it would help with the garbage on the floor if you just had a garbage bin right after the receipts. There might be a reason why they don't, or it might just be, what do you mean? This is just always what we did. And therefore, the reason why we start the entire Seder with questions is to realize that we're not repeating the same thing over and over again. We are rethinking that. And when we rethink an experience, it's not the same as it was last year anymore. It's a totally different experience because our experience in life is different. Our understanding of the importance is different. No one could say possibly, listen, if we sit down, imagine the following. Jews around the world are sitting down at their Seder. There are literally people that went me'avdus lecheres, from captivity to freedom. None of us think that the words that they're going to be reciting at the Seder about what it means to be redeemed is going to be the same as it was 2 years ago. That's impossible. And that's obviously an extreme example, but all of us go through or experience or see life that gives us a new understanding. And therefore, the worst thing a Jew could ever do is just to repeat the same thing over and over again. The goal of starting with questions is to say that the actions might be the same, but your understanding of it should deepen. Your understanding of it should change based on, and you should be humble enough to realize that things that maybe I used to think didn't make sense or were not valuable might have more value and make more sense than we could have imagined. In fact, you see this halacha by tefillah as well, by prayer. It says any tefillah the person does keva, fixed, is not a tefillah. So all the commentaries ask, what do you mean? Like I have, yes, like there's a sitter right over there. Like it's fixed. They tell us what to say. It says, yeah, the words are the same, but what you're saying when you say them has to be different. You have to be present in that, right? 2 days ago, when I said in my bracha of Rifa'inu, please give someone healing, I wasn't thinking of a certain individual that happened to come across my path today, right? A certain area, when I think about sim shalom and peace, when I know that there's some shalom bias issues with somebody's home that I'm dealing with, it wasn't part of my tefillah anymore. If I just go through the same moments and say, yeah, I'm just saying the same prayers, that's not what prayer is. Any experience that we have to rethink, re-examine what it is. And therefore, for us as adults, as parents and grandparents, it's not just how do we get the kids interested, it's how do I, at whatever stage I'm blessed to be on this planet, constantly be rethinking and re-examining and deepening my understanding of things that I've been learning over and over again. And that's number one, I think, important for us. Number two is I saw a beautiful idea by Rabbi Nathan Lopez Cardoza many years ago. And he speaks about how there, I think the way he phrases it is as there is nothing more irrelevant than an answer to a question that nobody asks, right? Meaning that I can sit there and spew information all I want, but a person has to be curious enough about it. Meaning it doesn't really mean anything. If the person has no interest, no curiosity, then whatever information you provide them is irrelevant. Meaning if I want to know how to get to Costco and somebody gives me the information, I'm listening, right? Because I want to know the answer. If I don't really care and they're like, hey, this is, by the way, how you get there, I'm not even listening to what they're saying because I'm like, I don't want to go there. I'm not interested in that. I don't even know what it is. It doesn't matter to me. In life, when we're trying to give over lessons and values, the first step is to generate that curiosity, which is necessary in order for information to be downloaded in the first place. In fact, I remember, I think in that book, he says that somebody once said, you know what, there's a book called Moreh Nevuchim, the book of the confused by the Rambam, where he tries to sit there and Guide to the Perplexed, I think it's called in English, the Guide to the Perplexed, a famous book by the Rambam written over 1,000 years ago. And he was asked, he said, you know what, we need a modern Guide to the Perplexed. There should be a new book. He said, the only problem is people aren't perplexed today. People aren't asking the big Jewish life meaningful questions the way they might have used to grapple with those things. So the only way a guide to the perplexed is important if people are perplexed about the questions. So therefore, the whole concept of the start of the Seder is to say, guys, in order for this to be meaningful, we have to realize we have to generate the curiosity, right? Hey, why are we doing this differently? Could lead to, hey, why as Jews are we different? What is our calling? Why can we do this and other people can't? Or other people can't do this, but it's okay for us. What are all the differences? Getting the curiosity to realize that there's something unique and special and different, and then within that, asking those questions. So that's number two. Number one is we have to be asking. Number two, we have to realize that we have to generate questions in order for curiosity and education to begin. And as we know, the night of Pesach is the most educational night of the entire year, right? And then the third part is, I believe, is that we're not really, which is connected, we're not really teaching people the questions, meaning the questions are laid out there. And we start with the youngest kid, right? I think that's the custom across, the world, where you get the littlest kid that can stand on their own 2 feet on the chair to belt it out. You have the shy kids that say the first few and then stick their head like this and don't want to do the rest. You have that loud, proud kid that's just belting it out. But we always start with the youngest kid, right? Why do we do that? And the questions, they know the questions. When they get up each year, they've studied the questions for ages, so they're not learning anything at that point in time. And if they've done it last year, chances are the next year they know the questions already. So why don't we just say, you know what, listen, the Seder's long enough. There's so much to cover. Let's skip the parts that they know, right, and go to the parts they don't know. So the one part that every kid knows is they know, Manishtana. Yeah, maybe they know most of Dayenu, but probably not all the words. They know Dam Tzardea with their pinky, and they might be know Chad Gadya. Get rid of the questions and get to the... So perhaps, maybe the lesson over there is we're not teaching the kids the questions. We are teaching the kids that to be Jewish means to constantly question. Period. meaning teaching kids the health and the importance of questioning. So, as opposed to us just sitting there and trying to elicit curiosity to bring out those questions, we start by saying, kids, you know what the fundamental aspect of Jewish growth is? Always be questioning and challenging. Right? We see that's what our Talmud is. Our Talmud is a bunch of rabbis just questioning each other. Right? Whenever you have something that isn't strong, isn't valid, doesn't have depth to it, you're worried if you question it too much. Don't ask too many questions. Just when somebody says don't ask too many questions, that there's probably something at the foundation of that which is not as strong as it should be. Right? If somebody says, hey, you know what, can I take this for a test drive? And they're like, you know what, a used car lot, right? Can I take it for a test drive? No, no, no. After you buy, you'll take it for a drive. There's a problem. Hey, why is that light on? Whatever. Lights are always on, right? If you don't allow for people to ask questions, it shows that you don't actually believe that what you have is valuable, and B, it doesn't allow the individual to more deeply understand that which you were trying to convey. Questioning is the most powerful tool we have to deepening and exploring what we have. And I think we've all known, and I'm not sure if it's still true. Sometimes we get into these iterations of things that were always said. You know what? Oh, my teachers don't let us ask questions. The rabbi doesn't take questions. He just says that's the way that it is. I'm not sure if that's true anymore, or if it was true back then. I don't know. But the reality is that there is never a question that should not be asked. There's a time and a place, there's an appropriate way of asking a question, and there's asking a question with the sincerity of wanting to know the answer. Meaning, when the Russia says, Ma avodas lachem, we embrace the question, but we also know that he's asking the question with a little bit of chutzpah. And therefore, when it says hakesh, not for now for understanding, what does it mean straighten his teeth, right? One of the explanations on that is you got to teach him how to ask a question. I mean, if somebody goes up to someone and says, like, anything, you're an idiot. Why are you doing this? It's not a question. That's a judgment, right? If somebody says, listen, honestly, I don't understand why you're doing this. I think it makes no sense. Okay, now we can have a discussion along the way. And therefore, we encourage those questions. I think there was one of the Jewish Nobel Prize winners, I can't remember his name offhand, but he always said that, the reason why he became whatever he was within, I think it was physics or science, I can't remember, an Israeli, maybe Aumann was his name. He said that, what happened was his mother always encouraged him to ask questions. Right? He never got a, hey, that was a great answer. He got a, hey, that was a great question. Right? Answers aren't as difficult as we think. Asking the good question that gets the ability to uncover the sort of the jewel that's inside of there, that's what becomes important. And therefore we see even God's first action to Adam and Eve, right? The first words communicated after they make a mistake, which again, they don't get kicked out for making a mistake. They get kicked out for denying it. But the first thing God does is he asks, Ayeka, where are you? I want to engage in a conversation with you, not why did you do that, or you're not whatever. Hey, what were you thinking? Where are you? Why are you doing that? Right? With the ability, if a person embraces a question, isn't scared by them, they realize that the questions are the greatest growth opportunity that are there. So therefore, these are, I think, are three of the many. And I encourage everyone always to get a Agada. I'm always upset if somebody tells me they use the Maxwell House Agada, not because I don't like Maxwell House, I don't know how their coffee is, but because there's so many beautiful Agadas with so many wonderful explanations. I had the schus and merit with my monthly chavrusa with Adam Minsky. We were learning something, and then I gave him the Haggadah we were learning from. I'm like, you got to use one. Here's one like this. We should all have these things because there's so many things to learn, and it all starts with curiosity, with questioning, teaching our kids to do that, realizing that thing which we think we know we might not know the way we should, it could be better, and to model that and realize that we're still on that process of understanding and figuring out, and even we can explore and uncover new things in our understanding of the Seder, of the whole idea of Pesach, and all of Yiddishkeit as well. Chevra, we got one more next week before Pesach. So if anybody has a suggestion of something they want to try to approach, feel free to send me an email on that one, revlipner@gmail.com or rlipner@ujfed.org. And wishing everyone an awesome Shabbos and happy Pesach cleaning and shopping.
Okay, good Shabbos.
Thank you. Good Shabbos.
Thank
Thanks.
you. That was
Shabbos.
fun. Okay, how do we stop recording? Yes, I'd like to stop recording.